Welcome to our channel where we bring you the world's most important news stories curated in one place. We save you hours of searching by gathering breaking developments from trusted sources worldwide. If you find value in staying informed efficiently, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. Your support helps us continue delivering quality news aggregation. Today marks a critical moment in transatlantic relations as President Donald Trump arrives at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. But this isn't just another diplomatic gathering. What was meant to be a routine meeting of global leaders has transformed into an emergency summit. The reason? Greenland. The story begins with an unprecedented declaration. On Saturday, January 18th, President Trump announced sweeping tariffs against 8 NATO allies: Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and Finland. 10% starting February 1st, escalating to 25% by June 1st. The condition? A deal must be reached for what Trump calls the complete and total purchase of Greenland. Let me be clear about what this means. These are America's closest military allies, countries bound by a treaty dating back to 1949, a treaty that says an attack on one is an attack on all. And now, that unity faces its gravest test in decades. Pause for effect. The timing tells you everything. Trump's announcement came just hours after these same countries deployed small contingents of troops to Greenland for joint military exercises. Denmark called it Arctic endurance, a response to Russian activity in the region. Trump called it something else entirely, a provocation. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent defended the president's position from Davos on Tuesday morning. Speaking to CNBC, he said this is what American leadership looks like, that the United States is back. He argued that European countries have been building schools and healthcare while America defended the world. Now, he suggested, it's time for them to pay. But here's what makes this moment so extraordinary. European leaders aren't backing down. 8 nations issued a joint statement Sunday calling the tariff threats completely wrong. They warned of a dangerous downward spiral. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said applying tariffs on allies for pursuing NATO's collective security is fundamentally mistaken. If you're just joining us, don't forget to like and subscribe. We aggregate the day's most crucial stories so you never miss what matters. French President Emmanuel Macron was even more direct. He called the threats unacceptable. On Tuesday at Davos, he warned against a world without rules where international law is trampled and only the strongest prevail. He didn't name Trump. He didn't need to. Now let's talk about Greenland itself. This Arctic island is home to 56,000 people, mostly indigenous Inuit. It's been part of the Kingdom of Denmark for centuries, though it governs itself in most matters. Strategically, it sits between the Arctic Ocean and North Atlantic. Its capital, Nuuk, is closer to New York than to Copenhagen. The island contains vast mineral resources and hosts Patuxent Space Base, America's northernmost military installation. But here's the critical detail. Polls show 85% of Greenlanders oppose joining the United States. Only 6% support the idea. On Saturday, thousands marched in Copenhagen and Nuuk carrying Greenlandic and Danish flags. Their message was clear. Greenland is not for sale. Trump's justification centers on national security. He argues China and Russia want Greenland and Denmark cannot defend it alone. He's mentioned this supposed threat repeatedly. His supporters in Congress echo this reasoning. Senator Tom Cotton told Fox News that acquiring Greenland is vital for American interests. Pause. But opposition isn't just coming from Europe. Within Trump's own Republican Party, voices of dissent are growing louder. Representative Don Bacon of Nebraska called the threats to NATO countries shameful. Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska said the tariffs are unnecessary, punitive, and a profound mistake. Senators Jeanne Shaheen and Tom Tillis issued a bipartisan statement warning this rhetoric helps adversaries like Putin and Xi who want NATO divided. The market response has been swift and brutal. On Tuesday, the Dow Jones dropped 534 points. The S&P 500 fell 1.2%. The Nasdaq tumbled 1.4%. Treasury yields spiked. The dollar declined as investors questioned the safe haven status of American assets. The fear gauge, Wall Street's volatility index, hit levels not seen since late November. This isn't just economic turbulence. This represents a fundamental crisis of confidence. Global capital is fleeing American markets because the President of the United States is threatening military action against allies, and Trump hasn't stopped with tariffs on these 8 countries. On Monday evening, he announced 200% tariffs on French wine and champagne after Macron declined to join what Trump called his Board of Peace on Gaza. Shares of French luxury giant LVMH fell nearly 2%. Subscribe now if you want to stay ahead of these developing stories. We monitor dozens of sources so you don't have to. The diplomatic fallout continues to escalate. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte reportedly sent Trump a private message expressing commitment to finding a way forward on Greenland. Trump shared what appeared to be this private communication on social media. He also posted a doctored image showing himself planting an American flag next to a sign reading Greenland, U.S. territory, established 2026. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen called Trump's tariff announcement a surprise given what she described as a constructive recent meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio. She warned Tuesday that the worst may still be ahead. Denmark responded by deploying additional combat troops to Greenland. They arrived Monday evening at Kangerlussuaq. Danish officials insist these deployments are about countering Russian activity, not responding to American pressure. But the message is unmistakable. Denmark will not be intimidated. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen addressed this crisis directly from Davos on Tuesday. She pledged a massive European investment surge in Greenland. She promised to work with the United States on Arctic security, calling it clearly in our shared interest. But she also warned that plunging into a downward spiral would only aid the adversaries both sides are committed to keeping out of the strategic landscape. Pause for dramatic effect. Reports suggest the European Union is considering unprecedented retaliation. The Financial Times reported Sunday that EU ambassadors held an emergency meeting to discuss response options. These include 93 billion euros worth of counter-tariffs or restrictions on American companies accessing European markets. Some officials call it the trade bazooka. This would be the first time the EU uses its anti-coercion mechanism against the United States. Think about that for a moment. America's largest trading partner, decades of integrated economies, supply chains built over generations, all of it potentially unraveling over an island most Americans couldn't locate on a map. Trump arrives in Davos on Wednesday to address the World Economic Forum. He announced on Truth Social that following a phone call with NATO's Rutte, he will hold meetings with various parties concerning Greenland. He wrote that Greenland is imperative for national and world security, that there can be no going back, that everyone agrees, but everyone does not agree. Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda warned that using force to take Greenland would likely end NATO. He called this the best news for Russia. His country sits on NATO's eastern flank. They've warned for decades about Russian military ambitions. They know what happens when great powers redraw maps by force. If you appreciate this comprehensive coverage, hit that like button. It helps more people find accurate, aggregated news. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said he will try to meet Trump on Wednesday. He emphasized Germany doesn't want a trade dispute but will respond if confronted with unreasonable tariffs. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson said his country will not be blackmailed. Norway's Prime Minister stressed that threats have no place among allies. The historical context matters here. Trump's push for Greenland isn't new. In 1946, President Harry Truman secretly offered Denmark $100 million for the island. Copenhagen refused. That offer only became public in 1991. Trump himself raised the idea during his first term. It went nowhere. Danish officials dismissed it. He reportedly considered it again before leaving office. But this time feels different. The tariff threats, the public pressure, the willingness to fracture NATO. The stakes have never been higher. Inside the White House, Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller defended the approach on Fox News Saturday. He argued Denmark is a tiny country with a tiny economy and tiny military that cannot defend Greenland. He claimed raw military power has decided territorial control for 500 years. He didn't mention that Denmark is a NATO member. That attacking Denmark means attacking all NATO countries, including the United States itself. This is the paradox at the heart of Trump's strategy. He demands European allies spend more on defense. But when they deploy troops to defend NATO territory, he calls it a dangerous game and threatens economic warfare. Bipartisan congressional delegations have traveled to both Denmark and Greenland in recent days trying to reassure allies. Senator Chris Coons and Senator Murkowski led one group. They praised European troop deployments as NATO partners stepping up to secure the high north against Russian aggression. They urged both sides to de-escalate. Subscribe to our channel. We aggregate breaking news so you're always informed without spending hours searching. The global reaction extends beyond Europe. China has watched this crisis with keen interest. Beijing has long sought greater Arctic access. Trump's argument that China wants Greenland becomes somewhat self-fulfilling when American actions push Denmark closer to seeking alternative partnerships. Russia, too, benefits from NATO division. Every hour, European and American leaders spend arguing about Greenland is an hour not spent coordinating on Ukraine or deterring further Russian aggression. Trump's supporters argue this is strategic genius, that threatening allies forces them to negotiate, that everything is transactional, that once a deal is struck, these tariffs disappear and relationships normalize. Critics see something far more dangerous, a president willing to shatter 75 years of collective security over personal ambition, a fundamental misunderstanding of how alliances work, a gift to America's actual adversaries wrapped in the language of national security. Pause. The legal questions are also mounting. Trump's authority to impose these tariffs remains unclear. He's relied on the International Emergency Powers Act for most global tariffs. But that law faces scrutiny before the Supreme Court. A decision could come as early as this Tuesday. If the court limits presidential tariff authority, Trump's entire economic leverage strategy collapses. Even assuming Trump has the legal power, the economic consequences could be severe. These 8 countries represent massive American trading partners. Denmark alone isn't a major trade partner, but the UK, Germany, and France, they're integrated into American supply chains across countless industries. Tariffs don't just hurt them. They hurt American businesses, American consumers, American workers. Financial analysts offered mixed assessments. Michael Brown of Pepperstone called this escalate to de-escalate. He suggested Trump's timing before Davos indicates this is negotiating theater, that both sides will recognize mutual destruction serves no one. That compromise eventually prevails, but others aren't so sure. The damage to American credibility may already be done. When the president threatens allies with economic warfare, shares private diplomatic messages, and posts AI-generated images of territorial conquest, trust evaporates. And trust, once lost, takes years to rebuild. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for daily news aggregation. As Trump prepares to address Davos, European leaders are coordinating their response. Reports suggest the G7 may convene on the sidelines, ostensibly to discuss peace between Russia and Ukraine, in reality to present a united front on Greenland. Danish representatives were invited to Davos. They declined to attend. Their absence speaks volumes. Greenland's Prime Minister, Jens Frederik Nielsen, spoke carefully on Tuesday. He said his government takes this situation very seriously, that they're working with NATO and allies, that all Western countries should be united by respect for territorial integrity and international law. He didn't mention Trump by name. He didn't need to. The protests continue. In Nuuk, thousands gathered despite bitter cold and snow. They carried signs saying Greenland is not for sale. They chanted Kalalit Nunaat, the island's indigenous name. They're fighting for self-determination, for the right to decide their own future, not to be bargaining chips in great power competition. This is what makes Trump's entire approach so troubling to critics. Greenland isn't empty territory to be claimed. It's home. It's a people, a culture, a history spanning thousands of years. And they've made their position abundantly clear. The American public seems to agree. A recent Reuters Ipsos poll showed less than 1 in 5 Americans support acquiring Greenland. 3/4 oppose it. This isn't what voters elected Trump to pursue. So where does this crisis go from here? Trump speaks at Davos on Wednesday. He's promised to outline details of what he calls an affordability pitch. But Greenland will dominate the conversation. European leaders will press for de-escalation. Trump's team says meetings are scheduled with various parties. What those meetings produce remains anyone's guess. Subscribe now so you never miss critical updates on this developing story. The tariffs are set to begin February 1st. That's less than 2 weeks away. Unless a deal is reached or Trump backs down, American consumers will pay more for British cars, German machinery, French wine, Swedish furniture, Norwegian seafood, Finnish electronics, Dutch flowers, and Danish pharmaceuticals. The economic impact will be felt across both continents. European retaliation, if it comes, would hit American tech giants, agricultural exports, and financial services. Boeing, Apple, Google, Microsoft, American farmers. All would face new barriers to European markets worth trillions of dollars. This is the reality of economic warfare. There are no winners, only varying degrees of loss. The next 48 hours will be critical. Watch for Trump's Davos speech. Watch for meetings with European leaders. Watch for any signs of compromise or further escalation. Watch the markets. Watch congressional reactions. Watch NATO's response. This channel exists to save you time. We monitor dozens of sources. We verify facts. We aggregate what matters. If you value that service, show your support with a like and subscription. The world stands at a crossroads. The transatlantic alliance that won World War II, contained Soviet expansion, and built unprecedented prosperity faces its most severe test. Not from external enemies, from internal division. From questions about whether shared values and mutual defense still mean something in an era of transactional diplomacy. Greenland will not determine the 21st century. But how America and Europe navigate this crisis might. Do alliances endure? Does international law matter? Can democracies still cooperate? Or does might make right? Do deals replace principles? Does strength mean domination? These aren't abstract questions. They're playing out in real time. In Davos. In Brussels. In Copenhagen. In Nuuk. In markets worldwide. And the whole world is watching. Thank you for joining us for today's news aggregation. Remember to subscribe for daily updates on this story and other breaking developments. Hit that like button. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts. We read everyone. Until tomorrow, stay informed, stay engaged, and stay connected to what matters.